presentation over small group communications in the classroom. And so the reason why I chose this is because a lot of times when you work together in a group setting, you have to work together and you have to be able to communicate. So I kind of wanted to look at that in the education system and see how well it's actually working, what all they've studied, and everything else. So Helen Keller said that alone we could do so little, but together we can do a lot. And so the reason that I kind of like this quote and I wanted to start out with is because a lot of times in group work, even though you maybe don't contribute as much as you would individually, you get a lot more different viewpoints that will kind of help you out. And the purpose of my paper was just to kind of explain to everybody that group work can come together in a lot of different ways, and that I wanted to just see how effective it was, what participation was like in the education system, and how it was subjected to different subjects such as math and science. And the reason why I think everybody should know about group work is because it kind of will help us better to educate our system. Everybody wants to make the education system a lot better than what it is. And so I thought that group work was one of the ways that I could kind of look at that and see communication-wise how that might help. And so today we're going to go over the literature review, and then I have a couple of future questions where I think the documentation could go with it. And so the first literature review was over how effective group work is. And so Lager and Racer said that there was goals and trust. And so basically in their study, they had a group of goals. And these goals were given to a group. And these groups had a task that they had to accomplish in order to reach those goals. And so basically during the study, what it showed was is that leadership and group dynamics will kind of just naturally form. Some people will take on the roles of a leadership position, some people will take on the roles of a research position. And it really doesn't take a whole lot of communication effort in order to find that. In Quebec's Infutine study in 2013, it was ways to be effective. And so basically what the study found was that teachers and professors aren't using group work in a way that should be used. And so they have a bunch of different advantages to disadvantages. And when certain situations comes up, here's what the study says you should do. And then Benito, DeCant, Kaufmans, and Flemings, which is in 2006, said that there were similar traits within a group. So what happens is when you just kind of randomly put people together in a group work, it doesn't work as well as if you were to put people that are perfectionists together in one group. If you put the people that want to get things done early into a group, it tends to work a lot better because they share similar characteristics. They're easier to get along with, and so communication should flow better in that way. And then the last study that was focused on the effective group work is the Flinson, McGee, and Diner Leak, which was in 2015, and it said basically to narrow it down is happier and more excited. So in group work, students tend to be more enjoyable and happier, but there was really no effect on if they were learning more in the groups. So it kind of leaves us with, yes, they get the goals done, and yes, everything works really well, but are they really learning anything more than if they were to do it individually speaking? So the next group that I kind of focused on was the science classes, and one of the things that I've learned was that a lot of times in science classes in group work, they're doing a lot of breaking into small groups and then studying the terminology that is involved with it. And so in Winchester's study, which was done in 1999, what they did was is they took a introductory science class and they broke it into smaller groups. And they worked on terminology and basically that kind of stuff together. And what they learned was is that yes, the class was more enjoyable, yes, they were learning more, and yes, everything was working well for them. And then you have the change, which is what he did was he went in through an elementary school and they drew pictures of like different science concepts. So the one that he used was over the water cycle, and it basically just allowed the teacher to be able to see as they were working together in a group just how well the students were learning the concept as far as different science. The next one was participation, and basically what happens is you'll see that in group work that the communication wise, as far as if students don't know what they're talking about, they'll kind of just rephrase everything else that was going on in the group. So basically if they don't have anything to say, they're kind of just rephrasing what everybody else is saying to kind of match everybody else. So they don't want to look dumb, they don't want to ask questions. And so group work may be a little bit of an issue there as far as doing the school system stuff. And then the last thing that I found with participation is that past experiences will also lead you towards future experiences. So if a group work in the past had not been able to communicate well, if they didn't get the work turned on time, and any other negative effects, it's likely that that individual will carry those certain traits into the next group work that he sees. So one of the last ones that I looked at was college classes, and the way that group work worked there was that they did course evaluations with the Martin and Martinez study in 2010. And so basically they broke into focus groups and they met with their professors with an outside source to kind of go over, here's what we liked about the class, here's what we didn't like about the class. And just kind of in that group work setting, the students were able to come up with like common themes together, and the professor was able to ask questions and everything else. And so it was a lot easier for the teachers and professors to be able to evaluate their studies. And what they also found was that when you broke into group work before classes, that more people were likely to be reading the material before they came to class, because again, they didn't want to look dumb. They wanted to be able to contribute to the group work, and they wanted to be able to communicate during the small groups. They also looked at it in a mathematical standpoint, and what they did was they broke into smaller groups and they had visualizations, and they basically wrote out the problems. The teacher had some sort of like overview, and he wrote out the problems, and they wrote out the problems at the same time. What this allowed was that communication within the small groups allowed students to be able to ask questions. Here's how I did it, here's how I got the answer, and they were able to kind of communicate how they did their mathematical problems in that way. The last way that I wanted to look at was how group work was enhancing the educational system. So White and Denise did a study, and it was basically two groups. One group did trust exercises beforehand while the other group did not. And what they found was that the group that did trustworthiness assignments beforehand were able to communicate better, were able to get the job done at a faster rate, and they were able to stay on task for longer periods of time. Liz also did a study in 2002, and basically it was a 2-year follow-up plan to 5th graders that were being trained on how to work in group work. And so basically the kids that did have training were able to effectively do group work at a better pace. So that led me to my future questions of where I think the research could potentially go to. One would be in the English department, and that one thing that I could see that they're using is the visual aids, which is used in the Chang 2012 study. And it's basically, if they can use it for math problems, why can't they see if it will work for grammar stuff? So if you're structuring a system or a sentence, being able to point out different things like verbs and pronouns and stuff like that, it should work the same way as if you're pointing out the math variables that belong in that math problem. And there's also the idea of doing drawings, which was in the Richardson study. And basically what it was is, if they're able to draw out science concepts, why wouldn't they be able to draw out different literacy as well? And the last thing was in contributing to engagement. So if it worked well in math and science classes, who's to say that it won't work well in English classes as well? The other question that I had was over tests and exams. So does group work have any effect? Because the studies will show that students are more engaged in their group work, and that class is more lively, and that everything is going great, like the Flimson, McGree, and Diner study will show in 2015. But does it really have an effect on test scores? Nobody's ever really done a study over whether or not test scores are actually rising when group work is present in the classroom. Yes, they do more of the reading in the class, like Clifton said in his 2011 study, but is the reading actually contributing to higher test scores? You know, they may just be talking in the group, and from them being able to paraphrase everything, like they do in the Sniff and Racing in 2017 study. And so basically, if they're just paraphrasing things in the group work again, are test scores really going up? Because yes, they're going to know at least what is being paraphrased in the groups, but is it really working well with everything else? And then lastly, are they staying on task and asking questions? So yes, group work will make sure that you're staying on task and that you're asking questions, but again, is it raising the test scores like they would like to see? So in conclusion, Helen Keller will say that alone we can do a little, but together we can do a lot. And so basically what my research has found is that class that had group work had a higher class participation, that the classroom is more enriched, but they would like to see more of English classes being used in the study and that exams and tests are actually raising